there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Adam.
This is Tim.
And I'm Jen.
We're going to give our hot takes on the game that we just finished playing, Rajas of the Ganges.
In Rajas of the Ganges, you play as powerful nobles trying to develop your estates and becoming rich and famous. This is a worker placement game where players will take turns putting workers out on the board to perform actions, but there's a catch. Most spaces have an additional cost of one or more six-sided die, and the actions you can take are dependent on the number or color of the die that you're playing. You'll place workers and spend dice and money to go to the quarry and add an estate tile to your personal province board. The tiles will have buildings on them, giving you fame, or markets on them, giving you immediate money. The estate tiles have roads running through them, and the roads have to connect to other roads back to your starting building. If the roads connect to one of the bonus spaces on the edge of the board, you'll also get that bonus. You can also place workers to take a market space, which will trigger specific types of markets in your province, giving you additional money. There are also spaces to get additional dice, and river spaces that let you advance your boat up a river track and gain various bonuses. As you're gaining fame and money, your tokens will be moving on tracks in opposite directions around the outside of the board. When a player's fame and money tokens meet, the game ends, after all players have finished that turn, and the player with the most overlap of fame and money is the winner. Rajas of the Ganges was designed by Inka and Marcus Brand and published by Hooch. So let's get into the conversation. Let's talk about mechanisms and gameplay. Adam, why don't you start? Any mechanisms that stood out to you with this game?
I gotta say, Tim, I wish there were some mechanisms that stood out to me from this game, but I don't think there were. There was your standard worker placement fare, and then you get some benefits if you link together this thing and this other thing, and then there was some little bit of comboing up if you did your benefits just right. Trying to think hard if there's anything that stood out as novel or exceptional, and coming up empty. What about you, Jen?
I played this game with you guys. That might be where my review ends. I think there's a lot of factors that feed into my flat review, but I mean, I think the most significant thing is, if not, I wouldn't call it memorable, I wouldn't call it exciting, was I think that it was a resource management game that I had no control over my resources, and that was the dice, right? And so what it came down for me is that I couldn't manage my dice, I couldn't manage my resources, therefore I couldn't get into the tile laying components or the worker placement components, because this human over here had no resource management. So that's how I felt about it.
Wow. Yeah, you guys are not trying very hard tonight. I feel so. Okay, it is a worker placement game, and it feels like a lot of other worker placement games, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But there are still some unique things going on with it. I think most worker placement games have some kind of unique, kind of angle to them, and I think there's a couple things going on here. Number one is that, yeah, the dice here are your resources, right? There's a lot of worker placement games where you collect resources and then you trade them in to do something on another space. And that's basically what's happening here. But the thing that's kind of unique is that the resources are these six-sided dice. So when you get these resources, when you get a dice, you roll it. And it's a dice of one of four different colors. So you have to pick which dice color you're going for various reasons. And you roll it, and then the pips on the dice, the number on it, dictates some of the spaces you can go to. It dictates the size of a state tile that you can buy for your thing, or it dictates whether you can go on the boat track, because only lower numbers can go on the boat track, or it dictates which one of the nobles or the assistants you can activate. That's kind of different, right? It's not like you were just out there collecting, wood and sheep and then trading them in for something. You were collecting dice and then had to find the best way to use the dice, and you could only go to spaces that those dice could activate. I thought that was really fun. I thought that was a different puzzle for a worker placement game. The only thing that was really frustrating to me about that was that I found the turns really fun using those dice and figuring out what to do. But then when you ran out of dice, the turn of just going and collecting more dice was so boring compared to the rest of the actions you could do. So to me, that was the only time I wasn't having fun in the game personally was when I had to go and just take a turn to get a dice. That just felt like a lame turn. So yeah, that's the first of the mechanisms that stood out to me. And I'll also say that what I thought was pretty interesting is that there was a puzzle there to actually get dice without having to take one of those wasted turns. There were dice you could get on bonuses in your estate. There were dice you could go by moving up the river track. And just like Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers, there were a lot of little bonuses that you could trigger and kind of run combos off of each other. And to me, I'll get into that next, but that was part of, how to eliminate just wasting a turn to get dice. So yeah, that's, I mean, what did you guys think of that? You didn't feel that like that felt, interesting or unique for a worker placement game?
This is weird. It's like a not quite a dice placement game. It's like a worker placement where your dice are the things that you have to pay.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere in between. So it's like I don't know if there's probably some name for it that I don't know. Dice mitigation.
No, I think it's unique here. Yeah, I agree. I think it's not a dice. Like I would have, if I just read the rules, I'd probably say like, oh, it's like a dice worker placement game, but it's not. The dice aren't your workers.
Right. So,
but they're acting with the workers.
Right. They kind of act in conjunction. So I guess that is the novel thing, and whether or not that's a fun thing for you, I guess that's where we're where we're at, or we're trying to come
where
to.
We may disagree.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So. Yeah, I could see the novelty of that. I'll yield to that. Sure.
All right. So I'll just jump in with another thing since you guys didn't have anything else to talk about. Another thing I like about this game, as I mentioned, were the comboing, the comboing of it. And, yes, the Dice Charmers, which we've all played earlier, does it more. And that's fun. It's fun to build those turns. But I got the opportunity to do that a bit this time. And my favorite part of the game was looking at that puzzle and saying, okay, this is what I need in 2 turns. Oh, if I move up the river track 3 spaces, then I can get 2 more dice. Then I don't have to waste a turn getting dice. So I'll use the dice doing that first, get the dice there. And then if I go and place this tile in the right space, then it'll go and it'll hit a bonus tile on my estate thing. And then I'll trigger that. I had a great time with that. I thought it was a fun puzzle.
How much time did it take you to think of all that through?
What do you mean? Are you saying that? Are you saying that I was playing slowly?
So Jen and I had a little chat in the green room, and I think one of my main issues was the length of time between turns. And a lot of this, I admit, was a function of Yukata, where it wouldn't let you kind of advance on until you picked your little bonus tile that you wanted, and you grabbed the color of dice that you wanted, and you had to kind of double confirm everything on Yukata before it would advance to the next player.
Yeah.
But the time crunch was getting to be a little much for me, and I would like to hear what Jen has to say about that.
Yeah, well, I can't help but go back to our amazing experiences with Rajas, the Ganjis, the Dice Charmers when we learned, because we learned it in the exact same situation, I think with the exact same 4 players. And so when we got online, Steve was like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to play Dice Charmers. And it took him a long time to teach it, but then it took us a little while to get into it. But once we got into it, we all universally loved it. And so I kept waiting for that to kick in with this version. But we played this game for 3 or 3.5 hours from beginning, like teaching to the end, based on the platform, based on the pokiness of the players, and, just based on the game itself. And that's where we got to. And all the reviews that we had read or the run-throughs we had seen in advance said it was going to be like 45 minutes to an hour. And I want to call a big BS on those because we apparently cannot function with that time frame.
No.
So I think that's what it is. When myself and Adam were talking about it in what the quote-unquote green room, this specific gameplay that we had just kind of sucked it out for us.
Yeah. And
so the joy that could have been had maybe in a different setting didn't necessarily come through for either one of us. And we just ended up as button pressers eventually just to get through.
Okay. Interesting. Completely felt different about it. I thought the game was fun. I mean, I thought the decisions to make in the game were fun. Like you heard Steve the whole time. He's like, man, I like this game. I feel like I've got friends that could play this. Now, I could hear that from you guys, right? Like, you didn't seem like you were having a fun time. So, was there anything else that, like, what did you think of the tile placement mechanism of it? I mean, obviously, you just got bored and you were tired and didn't want to play it anymore. But at some point, was it an interesting puzzle at all to, like, try to connect the roads and hit the bonuses and buy the right types of tiles and stuff like that?
For me, the first hour and a half, I was having a pretty good time. I was like, okay, yeah, I can get these roads and I can trade in my dice and get this road and connect this stuff and get the bonus. And here we go. Now we're working some Euro magic over here. So, I was having a good time for the first, hour and a half. And then it started to weigh on me, and I guess it got a little repetitive, and there wasn't that emergent kind of gameplay that I like where something blossoms. And I saw you get into a point, Tim, where you were further down on the river. It looked pretty sweet because you would do like this move, you get down on the river, and then you do all this bonuses, and then that gave you another move down the river, and boom, a whole another slew of bonuses would come your way. And I was like, man, that's a lot of stuff. That's pretty awesome. But there wasn't that developing kind of emerging gameplay for me that I like to find in games.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I did, like I said, I didn't feel that way. Although I do suspect that this game, I think it had some emergent gameplay. Like there was the opportunity to go after the markets in a different way, kind of focus on specific markets and try to take advantage of them. There was the opportunity to upgrade your buildings and then try to get buildings that match those. And then the river track to me is the most fun part of it, just like it is in the Dice Charmers game, like trying to find the right dice to hit the bonus that you want to. But at the same time, I definitely could see, I'm not sure that you could replay this game over and over again and have a very different experience. Maybe you could. This was actually my second play. It's been a few years since I played the first time, and I had fun on the first play. But I remember on the first play feeling like I mostly didn't have any idea what I was doing. I think a lot like Jen was feeling on this play. From what she said the other night. I don't want to put words into your mouth. And then it just, then I started to understand it by the end and I got it. This time I think maybe because of that first play and then the Dice Charmers and just having a little bit more familiarity with the market systems and stuff like that, I felt like I had a better grasp on it earlier in the game this time, and I liked it. I liked it a lot more. So, let's move on from the gameplay and mechanisms. Now, we played it on Yucata. Yucata's an ugly platform. We've talked about that before. It's nice that it gives us an opportunity to play it there and enforces the rules and things like that. Have you guys looked at the physical components of this game at all?
Yeah, I have. I've viewed them on the Board Game Geek and some videos, the video run-throughs and stuff. So that's about it. I haven't like physically seen them with my own eyeballs, no.
Yeah, anything that stands out to you, Adam? Anything about the production, good, bad, anything like that?
I don't mind the board game, the actual physical.
Yeah, the
board.
Game board.
Yeah, it looks a little busy at first glance, but I don't mind that. I like the richness of the colors and the kind of the way the silver, the money goes around and the fame goes around. I think that's all kind of gaudy a little bit, but I like that gaudiness. So I appreciate the colors and the artwork. And I like the vibrancy of it as opposed to like a Hansa Teutonica map or your dull beige, beige on beige on beige on beige type of map. So I did enjoy the board quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. What about you, Jen? Anything that stood out to you with the components? Anything that you cared about?
I agree that it was busy. It didn't work for me the same way it worked for Adam. That added a level for him. That was a lot for me to follow along for the first time. I think I would have benefited a lot from playing this game in person. But I love the fame track and the money track around the outside. It kind of provided like a picture frame to the board. And I think that's a different concept in the fact that it was, perfectly symmetrical. It surrounded it and it kind of created it held in our little art piece, which it is. It is an art piece. It has a lot of stuff going on in there. But it's also, when you take a look at the actual picture, it looks like what it is when it described in the directions or in the instruction booklet. So that's nice. I did, the resource tokens being, the resources also being the dice were weird because like, what were they? In the theme, I kind of wished that, they hadn't just been pips on a die, that we had been collecting resources. And I think that would have helped with the theme a little bit. And so if, the orange colors were a certain resource and the purple dice were a certain resource, I think that could have brought it all together. And granted, we weren't touching it in the moment, but I think even playing online, you can kind of get a better connection with the storyline, the narrative, and the game that way. So I would have liked to see the dice actually be resources.
Yeah, I don't think that they're actually supposed to, as far as I can tell, and as far as I read in the rules, I don't think they're supposed to represent different resources. And so I think that's a fair thematic, complaint about a thematic disconnect. Like you're collecting these things and using them, but what are you actually doing with them? I don't know. Maybe I missed that in the rule book, but I didn't see anything like that.
They're mostly associated with the buildings or the the tiles, as far as I can tell. You have to spend this color dice to get that kind of tile, but I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a resource. It's probably a simple answer if there is one in the rule book, but I don't know it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think it's more just a mechanically driven idea that it's kind of using a variable cost and what you can do with it. I want to circle back to the game board since you guys both mentioned it. I agree. I think the game board looks super busy on a first look at it. It's very much like Roger Zaganzi's The Dice Charmers, when you show somebody that piece of paper the first time, you're just like, oh, it's just icons on icons on icons, and this board is no different. But just like the roll and write, if it's like if you kind of separate out the board and say, okay, this section are the 6 nobles, and they're 1 through 6, and you can use one of those. And then down here, this is the section where you can get more dice. And then, the river track, of course, that's a whole bunch of different bonuses, but it's all activated in one space. And then you've got the quarry, and you've got the, so it's like it's laid out, it's broken out into sections that once you kind of explain it and talk through it, it makes a lot of sense. And in a way, I actually really like it after I got to know it. Like, it feels hard to teach people and it's overwhelming. And I feel like it is one of these games. I'll talk to this a little bit more about, my final thoughts, but I think this is a hard game to bring out, even though it's not a super heavy game. I think it's a hard game to introduce new players to, or like less experienced gamers, because I think it's going to be overwhelming to people to see all of the iconography and all the graphic design on the board.
I agree. There's a lot to look at. The icons are a chore. Not that much of a chore once you see them, but at first glance, you're like, whoa, slow it down here. What's going on?
I still remember my first play of it too. Kind of an unusual situation for me because I was kind of just getting into the hobby, and my family was out of town, and so I went to a local game shop. And this was one of my first times actually going out to like a game event with people I didn't know. And so I just met some new people, played a simple game, and then someone brought this game out, and it did feel a little bit overwhelming to me as well, even though I was a reasonably experienced gamer at that point. And she got through the rules explanation, and it's not that hard. So once she got through it, it was interesting. But I remember there being just a lot of different, feeling like there's a lot of mechanisms going on here. You've got the player board, the tile, the estate board, right? And all the different tiles going there. And then what's on them, the markets and the buildings, and you can upgrade the buildings, you can trade in stuff for and so aside from just the board being busy, it feels like it's a conglomeration of a lot of different mechanisms. They're not super complicated mechanisms, but I think it's unusual to have a mid-weight Euro of this type, or mid-weight worker placement, try to put that many things together that don't feel like they fit together in the same way. So I think that also adds a little bit to the first play experience is going to be a little challenging, and who you're going to play it with. Your super heavy gamers may not want to play it, and your super intro level gamers are not necessarily going to be able to jump into it or going to feel comfortable getting into it. So it's kind of an interesting spot there.
I would say I would be a lot more intimidated by the board if I hadn't seen Dice Charmers first.
Yeah. And I think from a teach perspective too, it was easier for me to teach it to you guys having played that since I knew you guys knew that game, so I could kind of compare it and say like, oh, this is the upgrade. These are the building upgrades, just like in the Dice Charmers, and here is the assistance, right? That you activate them and you get this one-time benefit type of thing. Jen, what did you think about it? I mean, we're kind of going back to gameplay here. I guess we're off of mechanisms, but on a first teach, you played the Dice Charmers. You knew a lot of the same icons. Was it still hard to get into?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a little bit what we've talked about already, but it was just that felt like it was more obvious how to be successful or to put pieces of the puzzle together in the roll and write version or in the dice's version of it. And this one for me, no matter how I wrapped my head around it, I couldn't put the pieces together in order to have a successful or even like a slightly competitive edge. Steve had said at the beginning, wow, Jen's really killing it. Yep, Jen was really pressing buttons. That was true. So I think that I definitely valued my experience in Dices. I love the fact that it's become a part of a rotation now. We brought it up for my birthday, right? Had a great time looking at it when it came to us on person. It got even better in person. Maybe this one would too, but we had a great jumping off point, I think, for the Dices one based on experience playing it as well as enjoyment playing it. I'm not sure I'd ever, I'm gonna jump over like 7 topics, so I say that, but I'm not sure that this one would be the same way.
Yeah. All right. Well, we played it on Yucata. I had played the production, the physical production, but there's not a whole lot to say otherwise. So I think we can move on. It's a graphically heavy board. There's lots of cardboard pieces and lots of colored dice. Adam, do you have something else on production?
Still a little bit of your thunder here, Tim. But kind of the dice holder is a pretty cute little thing. You talked about it. It's an Indian god or goddess, I believe, with many arms, and each of those arms has a little hand flattened out as a little perch for all the dice that you can hold, which I thought that was pretty cute.
Yeah, that's a fun little tool when you're playing with the physical production to kind of slot the dice in instead of just having them sitting out in front of you. It's have fun.
Right, it's kind of nice.
When I was looking at that stuff before we started talking tonight, just to see what the differences were, my eye was drawn immediately to that. So it's interesting that you would say that, but also was drawn to the elephant because love the elephant. The elephant is the
I
first.
saw the elephant.
Yeah, and the hair too, and so the little elephant that you get to take apart and put back together. So I love it.
Can I give you, from a components perspective, I'll give you one huge benefit on this version versus the Dice Charmers version, and that's that the elephant actually fits in the box when it's put together. Versus in the roll and write version, you have to take it apart every single time you want to close the box.
So frustrating.
So here we go. There's a big +1 for Rajas of the Ganges on that.
Well, if it's not in the box, it can always be the elephant in the room.
In the room.
Oh
nice.
my goodness.
All right. Glad you grabbed that low-hanging fruit.
Welcome.
All right, so let's just jump into moments of the game. I don't even know if I want to ask you guys this question, but did you have any moments of the game that stood out to you? Dig deep, see if you can find something that was worthwhile. Jen, anything at all that you enjoyed, or just something that stood out to you with this gameplay?
At the beginning, when everyone thought that I was like a genius novice player at this, it felt pretty warm and fuzzy, right? I don't need to, as we all know, I definitely don't need to win to enjoy a game. I lose on a pretty regular basis on most games that I play, but I enjoy them nonetheless. It's about the puzzle, it's about the feeling, it's about what my brain is doing. But Steve at the beginning was like, wow, Jen's really rocking it. Or, yeah, we're all going to have to catch up with Jen. So I was like, yeah, you're right. I kept looking at it and the gap was getting smaller and smaller for me and feeling really good. And then all of a sudden I looked up and like when we hit the 20, we were all tied at 26. Do you remember that? That was kind of neat when everybody had their gap at 26. And then, spoiler alert, I ended the game at 23. Steve ended the game at 22. Adam ended the game at 10. And Tim ended the game at negative 455, if I remember.
Negative 0.5, I think. It wasn't that far. -1, something like that.
So I would say that the highlight was definitely being applauded for how magnificent I was in my first couple plays. And then when the miraculous 4-way tie at 26 happened, it was just fun. Because again, there's player in action and like, the ribbing each other and then the camaraderie of the 26. That's what I like about a game. And that's a big part of, I should say, what I like about a game. So that's where it happened.
Can I tell you, though, that, one of the reasons why you started out so strong, and this is where there is an opportunity, I think, in this game. Even I won the game, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for me to learn and find emergent strategy and dig deeper here. The reason why is that, Jen, you were playing lots of buildings early, right? And that was awesome because they give you fame, and fame is double the value of money. The problem is that then you weren't getting money for the markets you were building, and you didn't have the opportunity to go to the market spaces and get more money on them. So you were always struggling on money the whole game. So it gave you a big head start. And that's something you would have learned, right? The next time you play it, like, oh, wait, I can't just build a bunch of buildings because they don't do anything in the future. They're great for just getting some bumps up on the score track, but they don't actually give you something to work with. While the markets actually do. They give you a smaller benefit, but then they give you a bigger benefit long term. To me, that was kind of a learning experience to see how you went one direction and we went a different direction, and it paid off in the long term, to go the other way. So,
well, Steve, I would like to note that Steve, who was 1 point away from me, did go in the other direction, and my intentionality on hitting the fame track instead of the money track was completely random. There was no strategic
for sure
work in that.
But
one.
now but we learned that, right? Like that was the thing at the beginning of the game. What building do you pick? You just pick one that your dice match with, and I agree with that. Like I didn't know at the beginning of the game which direction to go, and that's what I'm saying is that I learned through the game where there were opportunities, and I feel like the next time I played that, I would actually have a strategy to pursue and something to build off of. So to me, there still is, it's not just luck, and there is emergent strategy to come out of that. Adam, what about you? Any moments that stood out to you in that game?
So for me, yeah, I did find those markets kind of appealing, and I was working those markets at the end. I think Steve had a moment where he said he accidentally took the box market from you. I think you had like loaded up on 12 or something silver if you were able to go to the box market, and then Steve actually accidentally put his guy there and got like 3 silver or something from it. So that was pretty good. I was racking up, I guess they're rugs. They kind of look like shish kebabs or fruit roll-ups if you look carefully.
Fruit roll-ups.
Roll-ups. So that market, working those markets was pretty fun. Getting some silver, watching my little dude march up the silver track and getting the little bonuses going around the track for that was cool. And so seeing how that strategy worked out, and I can see the opportunity for like a little bit of engine building and building up your supplies. That didn't necessarily, a little bit of rules misunderstanding. That didn't necessarily stand out to me until about halfway through the game. That hour and a half point where I was kind of like my brain was other places at that point. Anyway, but I could see where that would be a nice emergent strategy.
Yeah.
And then Tim, I think I know what you're going to talk. I kind of alluded to it earlier. You did some nice things with the river. I'll let you talk about your moments of the game.
Yeah, I think, mostly what stood out to me in this game, the things that I found fun with were finding those opportunities to hit the bonuses at the right time. It's the same reason why I like the Dice Charmers game, right? There are bonuses all over the place, but if you are just, taking whatever action and then just kind of hitting this thing here and then hitting this thing there, you're going to get bonuses. But if you can trigger them at the right time, if you can line up, like spend 3 times kind of setting up this thing and this thing and this thing, so that when you hit this bonus, it triggers this thing, which hits another bonus, which triggers this thing. I found the same opportunities here. And that to me is a really fun puzzle. And it was fun to work around the dice that I had because, again, that's the resource you have to work with. So I might have this puzzle set up, but the dice I have in front of me doesn't match. So now I have to find a way to get a different dice and hope that I roll it or that I can use karma to flip it. And I like those fun little puzzles that have big payoffs if you can trigger them. So it was all about that to me. I think the other thing that did stand out to me was that last moment in the game that you mentioned with Steve, right? I had built up this market. I kind of figured halfway through the game too, how we were going to be able to get the payoff on these markets, building them up. And I was like, okay, if I can build all of this one type, and my map was terrible. I shut myself off. I only had access to like half my map. I couldn't hit any of my good bonuses on there or anything like that. And so but I did build up a whole bunch of market spaces. I just needed that box space, and it was going into what was probably going to be the last round. Now, granted, I was going to win the game no matter what, and nobody else was going to get to it. But I was so excited to hit that box space, and Steve took it. And you have to plan for that. I think if you know this game and you're like everybody's kind of on the same edge, you could see, that couple end rounds where scores are tighter and people are fighting over to be like, okay, I've kind of set myself up. I have to be the one that goes first. I've got to take the elephant in the second to last round, so that I can be the first player so I can go hit that box market, right? I think there's some tight competition here. I think in a lot of ways like viticulture, where in that last round, you have to be the one that gets to the sell wine space or the harvest your grapes space at the right time. Because if you don't, then you're shut out of some of the points that you've been working your way up towards. And I think once you kind of know this game, I think Rajas has those same moments available for it to interact and compete and race for the things that are out there. So yeah, the one last thing I want to say, because I know you guys both have been a little bit not excited about the game. You mentioned the length of play on it. It is not a long game. I mean, it's just not. It shouldn't be. We went into the game though, with me trying to teach it to, Jen had never looked at the rules videos or anything like that, so she had no idea how to play, which I did try to prep everybody for, so we could save that in the future on games, right? But going into that without teaching it and then trying to teach it on Yucata, where people can't see what you're doing and the screen's tiny and people can't read the numbers, it was a terrible way to teach a game for the first time. I do want to just give a little bit of credit to the game that, no matter what people's experience were here as far as that, probably part of why I had a better experience with it was that I knew the game going and I learned it intentionally so I could teach it. I read the rule book and I watched a how to play video. And so I felt comfortable going into the game and just playing it. And I'm sure you guys had a little bit of rougher time with my first time rules teaching and on that situation and stuff like that. Probably made it both a lot longer, but also just like a lot of missing information as to how you were going to go about the game and what you were trying to accomplish and things like that.
Oh, and I mentioned it earlier, but on the time aspect too, I think a lot of that is a function of Yucata, where it makes you say, okay, now which piece do you want to grab from which bonus do you want to grab from here? And then where do you want to put it on your map? Okay, and now which dice do you want to pick? And everyone's like, come on, hurry up.
Yeah.
Because in real life, you just be able to grab this thing, grab those things. Next guy can take their turn while you're figuring out where to put that stuff. So I think
there were several.
Yucata itself added some.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there were several moments too where even I was like, I didn't click that final OK button, and so you guys are sitting there waiting for me for 5 minutes, and I didn't realize you're waiting for me, and you probably thought I was trying to make an important decision, and I wasn't. I didn't, I was just done with my turn, and I forgot to click the button. Yeah. And so I think there was a lot of wasted time in that situation as well. Just
No, I agree that the length here was definitely a direct result of
Yeah.
playing on
Okay.
Yukata.
All right. So let's jump into the final question about the game. Would you request to play it again? I'm going to start on this one because you guys have had some chances already, and I want to come in on a high note here. I really like this game. I really like it. I like worker placement anyway. Like worker placement is probably my favorite mechanism, and I like when games can do something interesting with worker placement. Will I request to play it again? I definitely will with the right audience, but I think that's where this game struggles a little bit. I mentioned it earlier. Like I think this is a hard game to teach to somebody that's just getting into the hobby. If I was going to teach an entryweight worker placement game, Lords of Waterdeep, Champions of Midgard, like these are all worker placement games that are just a little bit easier to get into and help them understand the game. This one's got so much iconography and so many different little systems going on that it's hard to get there. I think it's a good game for somebody that likes kind of that midweight Euro like I do, and I would be happy to play it again. So if I found other people that were kind of into that, I think it's a great game that has a lot of fun, tight competition that's the opportunities for it there. That being said, there are so many midweight worker placement games. I like the game a lot. I don't, aside from having someone else to play with, I don't know why I would bring it into my collection because why would I pick this over several others? I just ran into the struggle with we had a great time playing Viticulture, and I picked up Viticulture, and I'm glad I have it. But how many times is that ever going to get played? Because it's got to compete with 10 other midweight worker placement games in my collection as well. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about it. I'm starting to feel like with worker placement now, it's such a heavily used mechanism that it's got to really do something special or unique to make sense to bring it into the collection. That being said, I like the game. I would love to play it again. I'd be happy to play it if anyone wanted to. I don't think I'm going to be getting it played with you guys though, but let me hear your thoughts on it. So Jen, what about you? Would you request to play Rajas of the Ganges again?
No.
Okay.
Moving on. No, but I would play it if someone else that I cared about or I wanted to spend time with wanted to play it again. So if you introduced this to Danielle and the two of you said, Jen, this game rocks our world, then I would throw it in the rotation the same way that you throw games in the rotation that I know that make it's painful for you. So thanks for that. And for that reason, I would play this one again. I probably would not agree to it under any circumstances to do it online because it added so much pain to it.
What do you think the odds are that Danielle would ever agree to play this game with me after I laid the board out on the table and she saw it?
I don't know. I think she might do it. And then she'd hate us all afterwards. And then, that's that.
Yeah, no, this board is exactly this is like the kryptonite for Danielle. She'd look at it and be like, no, there's no way I'm going to learn all those icons and systems and everything. All right, Adam, what about you?
I would not request to play this game again, no. But I would play it in person. I don't think I would play it on Yukata. So I'd definitely play it again in person and give it another shot. Why not? I don't know. We're talking about kind of dice management, worker placement. I don't know if Beyond the Sun does something similar with its kind of dice as resource management, which right now there's very few games I would choose ahead of Beyond the Sun. So I think I'd rather play that one almost any time. Yeah. It's almost totally different with its whole tech tree thing and everything, but same thing. You're putting a worker out there and then you choose what to do with your dice. You have to pay dice sometimes to do the move, and it does it a lot better, a lot more interesting, I think. All right, Tim, I had an answer for you about when would you pull this game out. It's all about pairings. Viticulture, if it's going to be a wine tasting night and some wine and cheese plate night, then you get the viticulture out. If you're going to have some Indian food, a couple of Indian plates, bring that to town, share it amongst your friends in the night with a nice game of Rajas of the Ganges. I think that would work. I'd be down with something like that.
That would be a super thematic, and that would be a really fun experience. That would be awesome, actually. Now I want to buy it just to have that.
The Ganges River runs kind of north of New Delhi there, down towards the I don't know if that's the Bay of Bengal. Probably ruining it up. Oh, it is the Bay of Bengal. Look at Google Maps coming through, and that's kind of the I think a thematic tie-in night would be kind of a fun situation for this game. It's a busy, and the map represents that. India is kind of one of the most population dense countries on the planet, and this map kind of represents that with its icon density. So I could get into a thematic night with Riders of the Ganges.
Yeah, I think that's worth noting too. That at least for a Euro, for a reasonably dry and just mechanically focused Euro, it actually does have a different theme. It's got a different setting than just some European country. Whatever. It's unique, and I like that too. I think that's one of the things that kind of draws me to it a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I think that will wrap up our conversation on Rajas of the Ganges. We'll talk about some things that we've been playing and that we're excited about right after this. All right, welcome back. So let's talk about some games that we have been playing or that we are excited about playing. Jen, I want to start with you. Anything that's got you excited right now?
Totally, Tim. I'd love to share about this new game that I played on Sunday. It's called Quacks of Quedlinburg. And I know that you've already brought it up on the podcast and talked about, nope, you haven't. Just kidding. Guess I should listen to every episode. Okay, so maybe Tim hasn't talked about this awesome game yet, but we played Quacks of Quedlinburg this weekend, and it was awesome. I mean, maybe this should just be more a dialogue than a monologue, but I had so much fun playing it. And when I was done, I wanted to immediately play it again, which is like the number one way that I evaluate whether or not a game is good. And the fact that my brain was already working on my next round about halfway through. And then by the time we were done, I was like completely ready to play a game, even though I wanted to go home at that point and go to bed. So
yeah, no, that's awesome, John. I'm really glad you liked it. And I was going to talk about it tonight, but that's actually why I called you out first, because I figured you'd mention it because you seem to enjoy it. I've been loving this game so much. So let me just give a little bit of description about it for listeners that don't know about it. But this is I'll call it a family weight game. It's a bag builder. So the idea being that everybody's got this little bag and there's some little chits in there. They're supposed to be ingredients. And you've all got this individual board out in front of you that looks like a pot. And there's a kind of a we'll call it a score tracker in it. But basically it's like a little track that goes in a swirl from the middle of this little player board all the way to the outside edges. So it's an extended board. And basically what happens is that everybody starts in the middle of the pot on a round, and it plays over 9 rounds. And you'll pull ingredients out of your bag and you'll put them on the board. And the ingredients will have a 1, 2, or 4 on them typically. So if you put a 1 on the board, then you move it up 1 space from the middle. If you put a 2 on the board, then you'd put it 2 up from the 1 that was before it, etc. And you're trying to essentially get as far as you can on the board, because the further you get on the board, the more points you're going to get at the end of that round, but also the more buying power you're going to get for more ingredients. The reason why you want more ingredients is because in that starting set of chits that you're pulling out of the bag, a bunch of them are bad. So essentially it's a push your luck game. What's going to happen is that if you end up with more than 7 value worth of these little these white chips that are in the bag, they're called cherry bombs, then you're going to explode. Your potion's going to explode. You have to stop there, and you're going to give up half the benefits you would have gotten for that turn. And so you're trying to get as many chips as you can without getting cherry bombs. And so sometimes you'll get to that like 7th chip, and you're like, but I know I've got more chips in there that are not cherry bombs. So I want to try one more time. And then you get that last cherry bomb that you were hoping not, right? So there's an excitement every turn about like what you're pulling out of the bag.
It's a life analogy, which I probably have pulled out a half dozen of these over the course of our talks on these podcasts. And it's like, are you going to settle? Or are you going to push the boundary a little bit to get to the next level of awesomeness in that sense? And so I really liked it. I don't know if I've ever played like a press your luck sort of game, but it's 100% in my wheelhouse. I enjoyed it. It made my brain feel awesome. We introduced it to a person who has very little gaming experience. I don't think we let that person win, but lo and behold, he did. And we just had a good we had a good time. Everyone at that table was smiling and laughing, but still thinking strategically, and it had enough of a weight that it didn't feel like it was purely luck or random what was going on the table. I like that piece. I really actually like the piece where we went into the middle and would decide what we're going to buy. But I feel like I'm going into it because I really hope that I can convince you to play this for the podcast purposes, because I had such a great time. I'd like to play it with, Adam or Chris or Steve and just kind of see, what that dynamic would look like. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I already told them that I think that this is a really fun game, and I would be happy to. It's a lighter game than we usually play, and I want to go back to the fact that there is a lot of luck here. Okay, this is not a heavy strategy game. You can make the best decisions here and just get the wrong pull out of your bag. So you have to go into it expecting that, but it's a fairly short and breezy game. It's fun. It's a fun experience. They've got some good things that kind of mitigate that luck. So if you just get really bad luck in the game, there's a little bit of a catch-up mechanism that helps to make you feel better. But in reality, you can get to the last round. Everyone can be fairly close, and whoever has the best luck in that last round is going to win the game. Like, that's straight up. But I don't even care. I played this game, I think, 10 times in the last 2 weeks since I bought it. Like, almost every night I'll just be like, Danielle, you want to play a game? She's like, yeah, let's play Quacks. Like, my wife is loving this game. My daughter played it with us. Jen loved it on her first play. It's just a fun game because it does some things for the weight of it. It's got that fun engine building piece that like you mentioned, the buying, right? The choices you get to make when you get to the end of the round and you get to add more things to your pot. But the fun thing is when you pull those things out of your pot, the different ingredients you get, they have little benefits that come to them. So, the cherry bombs are bad. And then there's like the orange ones, which don't really do anything but move you up the track. But every other type of ingredient, the other 6 colors that are out there, they all have a different unique ability that happens. Like, you put this one out and you get to look at other chips in your bag and decide if you're going to keep one. Put this other one out and you get a victory point. You put this other one out and you get to move up +2, or like they're all different. And that changes game to game because there's like 7 different colors of chips and there are these little ingredient books you put out on the board. And so you can essentially swap those out. There's like in the base game, I think there's 4 for each color. So you can swap them out and mix them up. And every game's going to play out different as far as what the chips do that you buy. So it's got a lot of replayability. It's a fun, breezy, just moments of excitement type of game. And for that weight and for the length of play, it is probably my favorite game that's going to play in 30 to 45 minutes. And that's saying a lot. That's usually not my type of game. And I would be happy to play this anytime, even as like a full game night experience.
That sounds awesome. A game that can pack that much punch into 45 minutes. It seems like a winner.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you think, Adam, and what, like Jen said, I would be happy to play this on the with the rest of the team on the podcast some night. I think we could get 2 or 3 games in 2 hours and really get a full experience for it. And I think you'd all enjoy it, but it'd be interesting to see how you all felt about it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm still riding high off of our art episode that we did last week. I found my elusive, I called it a Kickstarter game, but it's out there in the world. It's called Endogenesis. The art here is freaking amazing, and it's done all by the designer. He's also the artist. His professional job is a graphic artist, and the designer is David Go. He is out of Singapore. He's put together this beautiful, it's a card game. So you're kind of assembling your cards and your skills, he calls them, ahead of time, and you're paying resources to enhance your skills and your health in these cards. And then you kind of go to a little card battle, it sounds like. So the art is everything's kind of black, has a black background, a black base. And then a lot of the colors are just etched out on top of this black, like a lithograph, like MC Escher style. So that's kind of the base for everything. And then there's different color cards or different color skills. Not sure exactly what they are, but they have like a tan creamy one and a red and a green and a purple. So these different kind of colors emerge out of these black backgrounds. It just has a striking look. And I almost kickstarted it strictly off of the art. And it seems like he's continuing to develop it. He's got a version 2, and then there's an Endogenesis Beyond. So he's got a few things out there. And again, it looks pretty amazing. I'm gonna look more into it, see what we have here. So I'm looking forward to Stellaris Infinite Legacy. At least I have my eye on it. It's a Kickstarter ongoing right now. There should be about 10 days left by the time this episode, well, more than that by the time this episode comes out. Right now it's about 2.3 million, 13,000 backers. This game is based on the computer game, a 4X board game. It says based on the acclaimed Stellaris PC game. So this game, yeah, it looks like a 4X. This is the one that has a little box component, and you flip up the lid of the box and you kind of build up your display there, and I think you're at the helm of one of your ships and kind of commanding the action for all your fleet as you're going through these planets, trying to become the most dominant faction of them all. So yeah, it looks pretty nice. Again, there's no rulebook out yet for this, so that's kind of a head scratcher, but the rest of the board game and the production looks pretty good, and it's coming from a reputable publisher. These are the guys that have made like 878 Vikings and a handful of other games. I don't know them all, but that's the one that I know and I'm the most familiar with.
Yeah. A missing rulebook is kind of a big red flag, I think. Even if it's a prototype rulebook or a pretty well spelled out rule set is a bit of a red flag with a Kickstarter. And that's, my feelings on Kickstarter is that they're usually a bad bet, but I think that's one of the reasons why is it just means that the game may not actually be ready to be played. That's a risk. Like someone's got a concept, but they haven't played it enough to know that it's fun or know that it's play tested and that it doesn't have just bad game experience. One thing I want to call out though, it's got a 5.9 rating on Board Game Geek right now. This game doesn't exist yet. So that means that there's a whole lot of people that rated this a 1, a couple that rated it a 2. This is there's a lot of things in this hobby that I love. Some of the people in this hobby are one of my least favorite things about it. And the way that somebody's going to come onto, a page, somebody's developing this game, they're putting their effort into it, and they're just trying to create a great thing. And so there are some people that are on here and they're excited about the game. So they're going to rank it high in anticipation, thinking this is what I think it's going to go. Great. They're excited about it. Let them rank it that high. But then there's this whole group of people that are like, I need to counter out those good ratings. I don't want people to like a game before they've experienced it. And so then they're just rating it 1. And I've seen this happen repeatedly now, especially with games that are popular, that people are excited about. Don't do that. If you're not interested in a game, just don't look at it, ignore it, don't rate it. It doesn't matter. Eventually, when it gets out and people start playing it, they're gonna rate it appropriately. So it's not like this is gonna show up and knock one of your favorite games off the top 10 list because a bunch of people got excited about it and rated 10s. Don't come on here and rate games that you don't care about. I mean, maybe don't come on here and rate games that you do care about and you haven't played yet either. I understand that point of view, but this giving a game that doesn't even exist, that you've never played, a terrible rating, it's just mean. It's mean to the people that are involved, putting their creative input into it. It's mean to the fans that are excited about something, and you're just bringing the whole hobby down. You are a wet noodle, and you should not be playing games because games are meant to be fun. That's my take. There you go.
I wholeheartedly agree. That's a hot take right there, Tim. But yeah, that's a strange part of the hobby. Maybe a byproduct of the thumbs up, thumbs down culture of the internet. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I got worked up enough about that, and I'm glad one of us got worked up about tonight about something. So, so the one thing that I'll just mention, other than Quack, since Jen stole my thunder on that one, is that I did get the expansion for Parks, which is, what is that called?
Something with night, right?
Nightfall. Yeah, Parks Nightfall. I've pulled the components out. I read the rules. Jen and I started to play half a game the other day and didn't make it through it just because it was about 1:30 in the morning. So we ended up not finishing. But it looks really fun. I'm excited because Parks is a fun, fairly light game that I don't mind playing, but like games in that way, I would almost always prefer Quacks from a gameplay perspective. And I think maybe that's partly just because Parks has just gotten a little tired. It's starting to feel repetitive over many plays. I think Nightfall is going to bring that. It's going to add some new strategic decisions to make every turn. It's going to add some more variety in the cards and things like that. So I'm excited to play it. I think, when it comes back to the table, and it inevitably will, I think this will freshen it up for me a little bit. Yeah, I'm excited to jump into it. Just to give you an example of some of the mechanisms, there are now park cards where you normally would visit a park and you just get endgame points for it. But now you get some endgame points, but you also get an immediate benefit when you take that thing. So you might get less endgame points, but you're going to get a benefit. Also, there are these random tents that go out on the trail tiles throughout the course of the game. And so when you go to a space that has a tent on it, you can either take the benefit of the space, or you can take that tent and put it out into one of 3 or 4 randomly chosen slots that are available for that round or for that game. And those give you a different benefit. Once you've used up that space with the tent, nobody else can go there that round. So it kind of gives you some different choices to make as you're moving up the trail. Also, the one last thing that I'll call out is that the year cards, or the year bonus cards, which are kind of the end game scoring cards, which I think a lot of people have complained about. They're very hard to hit and you don't get many benefits for them. The new year round cards, there's a mechanism that allows you to get more of them throughout the game, but also they are, depending on how well you do, you get more points with them. So it's like you get 1 point for every one of this type of resource you have at the end of the game, or you get 1 point for every 2 of a specific type of park that you visited with mountains on it. So instead of just being like you have to hit 6 parks and you get 2 points, or you hit 8 parks, you get 3 points. Now it's like for every park you hit, you get an adjusted benefit. So it just makes it a little bit easier to get some benefit. I think it's going to make it a little bit more fun for people, and you have the opportunity to kind of go and pick more of those up as a choice with the 10. So just some interesting changes to it. I like when a game that's very simple adds a little bit more and gives me some more choices to make. Thanks, guys, for chatting with me about Rajas of the Ganges. I hope you all enjoyed the show, and until next week, have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.